Hey, it's Ryan Seacrest. Life comes at you fast, which is why it's important to find some time to relax. A little you time. Enter Chumba Casino. With no download required, you can jump on anytime, anywhere for the chance to redeem some serious prizes. So treat yourself with Chumba Casino and play over 100 online casino-style games, all for free. Go to ChumbaCasino.com to collect your free welcome bonus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Your Minnesota Wild had a clean period in yesterday's game. That first period, it was real nice. And that means that all new members get 50% off the first month of Tidal Wave's Best Car Wash membership. Offer only valid for today. Check out your local Tidal Wave Car Wash to sign up today.
This is your clean period leader, The Fan, and KFAN.com. We thank Brett Blakemore for that Minnesota Wild-related update, and we also thank Ben Goessling, the scribe who covers the Minnesota Vikings for the Star Tribune and StarTribune.com, at Ben Goessling via X if you are so inclined to follow, and he joins us live from Indianapolis. What's going on, my man? Are you combined out yet?
I wouldn't say I'm combined out necessarily, but it doesn't take long to get there. I find every year that I come to this thing, it's easier to get, my threshold for combine tolerance goes down.
Oh, when you show up with your glass already half full.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you just got to take it easier on the weekend before you get here.
That's a lot of it. I need the pre-gaming needs to probably come down a notch, but I think it's just that I'm getting old. I think it probably is the chief explanation of
it's
things.
Stimulation overload.
It's
at least for me it is. They're just, you got information and people coming at you left and right wanting to talk about everything, and it's great, but I'm overstimulated, man.
Yeah, there's definitely some of that. It's a lot of people flying by, a lot of kind of quick hit kind of stuff for a couple of days. And,
right.
It's a little different way of going about it.
Hey, with free agency less than 2 weeks, fewer than 2 weeks away.
Yeah.
Cam Robinson, what are your thoughts on Cam Robinson's future?
I think that's an interesting question because, Christian Darrisaw, I think they're pretty optimistic about where he's at in his rehab, but you can't probably go into the season thinking that he's going to be ready right away. And I would assume that they're going to want to have another option there at that spot. I think Robinson struggled towards the end of the year. It'll probably depend a little bit on what his market looks like, but I do think that's a spot they're going to have to address just because when Darrisaw has continued to rehab that, I don't think you can go into the season assuming everything's going to be just fine and he's going to be ready to go week one. If he is, great, but I have to think at this point of things they have to go in assuming that won't happen, or at least to give themselves an option there.
Right. And if someone like the New York Jets, for example, I've read that connection, if they go ahead and step up and pay him even low or average starting salary, then he's gone.
Right.
I don't think there's any way you're going to take a guy and pay him that much money to keep him around. So you're going to have to, again, go or draft or dig or find something in that regard. But, Darrisaw, it was just a huge loss with that offensive line, and he's it's the attitude of that group, right?
Yeah.
And I think Darrisaw's the one guy that's got it.
Yeah.
And so losing him, we saw what happened in just that half of that football game.
Yeah.
Right. And so hopefully we'll get him back. Right.
Yeah. I think you will. I think the progress from where it's sounded like things are is good. It's going to take a little bit, but you're right. The guy that will just bury somebody. He's got that edge that has helped him in that spot. And he's a big guy. He's got big hands, obviously has the physicality, but that attitude that pairs with it certainly is a needed component of that line. I think it's one they're going to look to try to get more of. But, there's no doubt that his presence physically and just in terms of the way he plays, Kevin O'Connell talks about play style a lot, and that's shorthand for I want to play tough. Christian Darrisaw does that.
We didn't discuss Sam Darnold a ton yesterday. We did with Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. But from your standpoint and in the Star Tribune, with it's a headline, you don't write the headlines, but with Sam Darnold, that makes the Vikings and Sam Darnold the, quote, centerpiece of the combine, end quote. And, the more Pete and I chatted with people yesterday and last night, that is the centerpiece of the combine.
Yeah.
There's so many people around here talking about Sam Darnold and what's next for Sam. What's your take?
Well, it's the first question I get anytime I talk to somebody is, hey, what are they going to do with Sam? I think, Kwesi talked yesterday about all of the options being open. I do think if they could get a tag and trade, I think they'd be very interested in doing that. The catch there is, how easy is that to pull off?
Yeah.
Because you would need to tag him. He would have to sign the tag. And then effectively, if you are doing that knowing you're trying to work a trade, you probably need him to buy into the whole thing and say, yeah, the places that you're talking about trading me is somewhere I'm willing to go. Otherwise, if he doesn't sign it, then...
Well, he doesn't have to sign it?
No, he doesn't have to sign it right away. I mean, there's a deadline for him to sign it. So he could do that on a different timeline than probably what they might want. Mm-hmm. So it's a tricky thing to try to pull off, and it does probably extend the timeline that you could do it. You don't have to... I mean, they have enough cap space. They could tag him, hold him, and then if somebody doesn't like their draft options in April, you could do it then.
Yeah.
If somebody gets hurt, you could do it then. But you do put yourself in a weird situation with the cap space, and then just, where they're going to be with J.J. McCarthy. It sends a message that it's possible Sam Darnold is the starting quarterback, and I think that's certainly an option for them. But then what does that mean for McCarthy? A lot of those questions are what you'd have to work out if you were trying to go down that road at all.
With J.J. McCarthy, can't remember if it was a story or a tweet. I think it was a tweet of yours after O'Connell spoke yesterday, that he could be a regular participant in the off-season program beginning in April. And that was kind of the theme of yesterday, is that he could.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, explain could.
Well, I think it's just, at this point of things, anytime there's a knee surgery, you're probably hedging a little bit because, just if you have a setback or something. But every indication we get is that he's been hitting all the check marks. He's been doing everything they've wanted to see. There was kind of a question about his weight. His weight is back up over 200 pounds at this point, which is kind of about where he wants to play. I think he was listed at the Combine at like 218 last year, but probably won't play at that. So I think basically functionally he's where he needs to be. From a weight perspective, I know he's been able to do some things on the field. It sounds like all things are moving ahead as they should. It's just until they kind of get the final clearances from the medical people before he goes out there.
But do you think that every comment on the available, like how ready is JJ and all that, do you think that's all goes in though with the strategy of what you want to do with Darnold? Because if you go out and say, we're all set and ready to go, and you know what I'm saying? It's like, we may want him.
And Daniel Jones.
Right, and Daniel. It sounded to me like they really put their best foot forward with Daniel Jones. If somebody, the Raiders or Giants, whoever, steps up and says, we want Daniel Jones to be our starter, he's gone. Because there's no way we're going to pay him.
Correct.
But if he's going to go somewhere and not start, I think that's what they were trying to do, is say, hey, do it here, because look what happened before. We did it with and hopefully that's the case, because it'd be great to have a guy with his kind of experience and talent. And I mean, holy cow, the sky could be the limit.
Yeah,
you're taking another high draft pick and talented guy, and just here we go.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, and I think that was a lot of the reason they made the deal to get him, to bring him in, to pick him up off the practice squad in November, is to get that early look at him. He's now been in the system. He knows the coaches. All of that stuff is there. So if he were not to be a starter, there's every reason to think this is the best possible place for him to be. Or I should say, if he was not guaranteed to be a starter, because it's still possible that he. Well,
the money will tell the story. Money says how much we're interested in you starting.
Yep. The role and the money always tend to match up.
Yeah. Are you catching any Aaron Rodgers related steam? Because I'm not.
I have heard none.
Outside of, I can't find anybody interested in him.
Yeah, that's about what I've gotten as well. It seems like it's going to be one of those things where you'll have to find somebody that wants him, and is he still capable of being the Aaron Rodgers that we've all seen? We didn't do a lot of that in New York last year, and then you have to decide, do we want to have to put up with all the other stuff?
I heard a rumor that he reached out to the Giants. Right? Yeah. It's like, didn't he? I mean, New York kind of saw enough of him.
I would think.
You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like we saw him in London.
Yeah.
And he's a shadow of himself.
Yeah.
I don't personally, I don't see him as a viable option. The only deep throws he's making are the 3-step fades. He's not. It's just not there.
No.
It's not there.
Then you got what we've seen.
Then you got to worry about him not telling anybody and skipping minicamp and going to Tuscany.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that you have to kind of be okay with.
Yeah.
Going on Pat McAfee all the time and saying, this is what I think about this. And yes, it's a lot to put up with if he's not the Aaron Rodgers that makes you say, hey, we can deal with all of it.
Last one. You wrote a story in the Star Tribune, and I believe it was last week or somewhere within the last few weeks about Zach Zenner.
Yeah.
A very cool story, by the way. Egan High School, class of 09. He was Mr. Football in Minnesota, and he started with Detroit, played for a handful of teams. But for those who missed it, Zach Zenner, what was that about?
Well, so that story actually started at the Combine last year. I was getting together with Zach. He actually has become an agent now. He works with Chris Giddings, who was his agent when he was playing, and so we got together to chat, and he said, I've got this sweat. We were talking about, I was training for the Boston Marathon. He said, I've got this sweat test where you basically can measure how much sodium is in your sweat so you know how many electrolytes you have to replace when you're sweating, whether it's in a hot football practice or a longer effort like a marathon, a triathlon, whatever it happens to be. So I said, okay, that's interesting. And I'd never really had a ton of problems cramping. Well, fast forward a few weeks to Boston. It's the hottest Boston Marathon in 6 or 7 years. I cramped up hard to the point where the last 10 miles I'm run-walk. My calf is cramping so hard I can barely flex my ankle. So I called Zach afterwards and said, hey, man, I might be interested in taking you up on that sweat test. So I went to his office, and basically they put a band around your arm. It's not one where they make you run to exhaustion and measure your sweat that way. They put a band on your arm that basically creates the chemical reaction that makes you sweat. They get a couple of drops of your sweat and say, okay, this is how much sodium is in your sweat. In other words, this is what you need to replace when you're working out. So I find out I need to have something like 15 times as much sodium in my system as I had when I was running Boston. So okay, I think we've solved that mystery of why I cramped up. So I ended up taking that. I ran Grandma's Marathon a few weeks afterwards, took all of those recommendations, ran great, ran like 2:58, which was the best of my life. And I told Zach, I'm interested in writing a story about this because he's kind of doing the agent thing, but he's also a sports nutrition coach, and a lot of the players that he's advising are also getting some of this health and performance advice from him. He passed, or I shouldn't say he passed. The MCAT, he scored the 96th percentile on the MCAT after his playing career. Basically said, I'm not going to go be a doctor because he's got young kids, but got admitted to medical school when he came out of South Dakota State, had an NFL career, took the MCAT again, could have gone and been a doctor, but instead he's using his master's in nutrition to be an agent and help players and kind of do some health coaching on the side. So pretty interesting guy.
Yeah.
But it ended up working out pretty well for me on the sweat test for region of things.
Or you could just stop running marathons.
That would be what my dad would say. Is stop running marathons.
Great job. That was a good story. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's Ben Goessling, covers the Minnesota Vikings for the Star Tribune. When we return, two-time NFL Coach of the Year and a former Vikings offensive coordinator, Kevin Stefanski, joins Combine Coverage 2025 from Indianapolis on KFAN and Vikings.com.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Join the Power Trips Meat Sauce and Miller Lite at Dave's Town Club in Delano this Thursday from 5 to 7. Stop by to register for a chance to win a spot in the Vikings Foundation Golf Tournament. Full details now, KFAN.com. Keyword golf.
All righty, welcome back to the Indianapolis Convention Center and Wednesdays, 9 to noon, 2025 NFL Combine coverage. Pete Bursich, Paul Allen, now joined by one of our very favorites. He has been the head coach of the Cleveland Browns for 5 years, two-time National Football League Coach of the Year. After 14 years with the Minnesota Vikings, he is Kevin Stefanski, who joins us now. First of all, good to see you.
Great to see you guys.
The two spot, obviously not preferred because it takes a certain degree of whatever to get there. But the two spot and all these unbelievable players. I mean, when you look at players of this caliber, it's different, right?
You're exactly right. Being up this high in the draft certainly didn't love how you had to get here. But now that we're here, you look at these players, Paul and Pete, and you see there's some really talented kids, and there's on the offensive side, on the defensive side, really at all positions. So the college game is turning out some impressive players.
Yeah, you had the opportunity to see, especially at the quarterback position, where you may go. It's up, obviously, could go anywhere, but having the ability to coach the Senior Bowl, does it give you, or what kind of a different opportunity is that to get to know some of these guys and how they work?
Yeah, that's a huge part of this. And I got to coach the Senior Bowl when we went down as the Vikings. What year was that, 11 or 12?
Yeah, the Russell Wilson year. He went in third round.
That's right. It was Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins, and coach of the New Orleans Saints, Kellen Moore. Those are our three quarterbacks. But that you spend a week with those guys. And what they're doing now with the Senior Bowl is you send some of your coaches down. So our D-line coach was a defensive coordinator. Our assistant D-line coach was the D-line coach. We had our our Nichols coach was coaching secondary. So we had a bunch of guys down there. You get to know these kids. You're around them for a week. So the Senior Bowl is a big part of it. And then here at the Combine, it's another piece. I know the formal interviews are, if everybody can picture this, it's speed dating. I mean, call it what it is. It's 20 minutes and it happens very fast. But it's good for you. You get a feel for the players. You get them up on the board. You watch some of their tape. So all of this is you're trying to paint a complete picture on each one of these young men. And this is a big part of it.
How much are they prepped up these days by their agents and the marketing companies and stuff?
Quite a bit. So we try to ask some questions and try to make them comfortable and try not to get the stock answers, although you definitely get them at times. Now, that's the next piece of this, as you guys know, is you get those 30 visits in March where you can bring the guys into your building. Now you have a day's worth of conversations where hopefully you can get them out of those stock answers.
So Colorado's Travis Hunter, when analyzing him, do you begin with a call to Pat Shurmur or watch film first, then call Pat?
I think you watch film first and then you call Pat. And, I mean, you don't have to really look very hard to watch Travis tape. I mean, that kid's so special. And I think anybody who's a fan of football was following Travis Hunter throughout this entire fall, So he was no surprise to anybody. He was no secret winning that Heisman Trophy. So you certainly just did some TV scouting. He was on every Saturday, it felt like, when we were in the hotel getting ready for one of our games. So you certainly saw that kid. You watch him on tape. And then having somebody like Pat in that building, like you do with all your former relationships, you try to get to know, you want to get to know a lot about these kids, so you lean into those conversations with people that you trust.
But I mean, even like Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders. I mean, how great is it? You say you talk to all your people, but how great is it having somebody like Pat Shurmur? I mean, you guys have been close for a long time, and you complicitly can trust him, and he's going to share with you where any bones are buried.
Absolutely, and that's something that I'm fortunate to have Pat at Colorado, and hey, Pat, tell me about those guys. Also, hey, Pat, tell me about the guys you went against. Tell me about the defensive end that you had to game plan versus. So you try to use all of your resources that are available to you, and that's, as an organization, you have all of your scouts. Hey, I'm really good buddies with the defensive coordinator at Florida. Okay, call him up, ask him about the guys that they had to go against. I think that's a big part of this in terms of information gathering. You're trying to use every resource you have available to you.
Well, we had Pat on the radio show yesterday, and he did mention that you guys had spoken. And, I thought it was fascinating with Travis practice. I mean, I thought about this for the full day before interviewing Pat, and I'm like, what do you do? I mean, he's full-time corner, full-time wide receiver, and I'm sure you know this, but he said that he worked mostly offense and sprinkled in defense in practice, yet he may be a full-time corner in the NFL. How good is this guy?
Yeah, it's remarkable. Chuck Bednarik, yep. Concrete Charlie, where did you go to college?
Penn.
There we go. Thank you, PA. Yes, thank you. So, yeah, it's very, very rare to see two-way players in this league, as we know. But if there's somebody that can do it, this is the type of profile, just with his ability to make the plays with the ball in his hand. When the ball's in the air, I don't care if he's playing defense or offense, you just assume that he's going to come down with it.
Kevin Stefanski, coach of the Cleveland Browns, 9 to noon from Indy.
You got two quarterbacks kind of in the mix, Ward and Sanders. Tell us what your initial thoughts on both of them are. What did they both do well, or at least what had they done that's impressed you so far?
Yeah, I'll be honest, Pete. I love all these guys. You get down to this draft, you watch 15 quarterbacks, you watch 15 running backs, you start falling in love with all these guys. And that's the good news. As a young coach, you were taught as you watch a tape, you're always looking for guys that you're watching tape, you're enjoying watching tape. So certainly the two guys you mentioned, Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, I mean, these guys are good football players, and it's not hard. You don't have to study the tape, and you got to go searching for plays. I mean, they're all over the field. Similar to watching Travis Hunter. It's very apparent. So skilled players. What I'm excited about is getting around them as people this week. I think that's the piece that oftentimes is missing that we don't get to do until we get to opportunities like this. So whether we're here with them, a 30 visit, pro days, getting around the person is as important as the player.
Let me get the weird out of the way. So does Myles Garrett really want to be traded? I mean, did that catch you off guard?
It's the NFL, Paul and Pete, and as you know, I've been in this league for a while and think about all the things that I've seen throughout my career going back to our days together. Nothing should, truly, it's the NFL. Nothing should surprise you. It should be not breaking news to anybody. I love Myles Garrett. He's a great player for us. I'm excited about him being on our team for the future.
Yeah, and when I said my bad, I'm like, yes, 14 years with the Vikings. I mean, so many things transpired positively and negatively during that time, including the weird. I completely understand that. So you guys get the NFC North next season, and the Vikings are going to be at Cleveland. What do you think of the division? Detroit down to the Bears.
Yeah, it's a great division. Again, one I know well from my time with you guys. And you know what it is? It's a great division with great players. It's also got great coaches. I think the world of Matt LaFleur, Dan Campbell, now Ben in Chicago, and obviously Kevin O'Connell's a good friend of mine, but I think he does a tremendous job with that team. So you have to prepare versus some really good football teams, but the schemes in that division are really impressive as well.
Yeah, what do you, for you going into this season? I'm sure you have a wish list of things that you want to do better. What's number one on that list? What do you think it is that you're going to get the most amount of bang for your buck?
It's an easy answer, Pete. It's turnovers. We led the league in turnovers, which is a hard way to win. They're hard to overcome. You can overcome them. It's just what I always explain to the players. You're just making life harder on yourself. So in particular, on the offensive side of the ball, we had way too many giveaways. As you know, takeaways on defense can come in bunches and they can come and go, but we just did not do a good enough job taking care of that football. So first things first, if we do a better job taking care of the football, you set yourself up to be in position to win some games.
You were here in 2010, the final Favre year, and then there, I think 2013, 2011 had some rough records. So I mean, like I said earlier, you've seen a lot of good and a lot of not so good with the Minnesota Vikings. Now, but you're a head coach now, so you're the man at the top. With all due respect to the GM Andrew Berry, was last year maybe the most taxing for you of all of your years in the NFL?
Yeah, I think, listen, losing's hard. It takes something out of you every single week. So that's a tough season when you talk about winning 3 games. I mean, that's tough game. That's a tough season professionally. Now, personally, you also have to look at things in perspective and understand that we got a great gig. Kids are healthy. You enjoy coming to work every single day. So you got to put things in perspective, while acknowledging that we want to make sure that we're setting ourselves up to have success.
Do you or what do you like about this Abdul Carter cat with Penn State?
Yeah, another really, really good football player, a kid who's from Philadelphia. So I know some people that know him really well. Obviously, just watching the Penn State tape and watching how he operates, I mean, he's relentless to the quarterback. You put on some of the tape, and it's a really tough. He's a tough out for some of these offensive tackles in college football, and it's the traits I think that jump out at you: his ability to bend, his ability to turn the corner.
Kevin, you mentioned when we were talking about the NFC North, Ben Johnson, offensive coordinator, Lions, now the Bears head coach. And, talking to O'Connell and people like you as long as I have, I know that you guys spend time watching everybody else just to see if there's a concept or something you can do to amplify what you already do. So with that being the case, with Johnson and the way he ran it at Detroit, I mean, we got some high-enders there. Jahmyr Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta. David Montgomery's been good, but he wasn't that good with Chicago. Now he gets in the right deal, and, man, he looks really good. And a quarterback who doesn't turn it over much. When you watch what Ben does, what distinguishes what he does?
Yeah, I have a ton of respect for Ben, professionally and personally, and he's another guy. He was raised somewhat in this business by Darrell Bevel. Bev was the offense coordinator when Ben first got to Detroit. Obviously, Bev was with me early in my career with Coach Childress and Bev, so a lot of what he does, I can see remnants and sound football and different things that they do in their run schemes, their pass schemes, and different personnels and how versatile they are. So Ben has taken it to a whole nother level with what they do from a shift and motion standpoint. So I have a ton of respect for what he does, and he's one of those guys that in this league, you get to Mondays and you start putting tape of other teams around the league to start to see what the creative things that people are doing, and Ben's really right at the top of the list.
And do you think it's still qualified, the NFL offense? Do you think the qualifier still is it's a passing league?
I think certainly the rules are set up that way. I think the league is how they want it. They do want that to be a big part of this. Rushing yards are up this last season, so that's, I think, in response to what teams are doing now and playing so much too high defense. So I think you have to be ready to pivot both in-game and season to season, because while the rules are set up for the pass game, certainly you're seeing people take advantage of some of those looks for the run game.
And here's the reason I ask, and I'm not going to divulge the guy's name, but after the Vikings lost to the LA Rams in the playoffs down in Arizona, I chatted with somebody that I've known for a while who's not with the Vikings after the game, and he said running and using your tight ends the right way. I mean, McVay out there with Higbee, he's got this Hunter Long and this Davis cat, and he uses them all differently. It's brilliant. It running and the way you utilize your tight ends, that, of course, having a good offensive line, that's always going to get you to it. That's going to never get too old. Do you see it that way?
I do, but I think you have to caution yourself, because I just don't think there's one way to do it. And look at the Super Bowl champs and look at how they built their roster, how they built their scheme, and how they run the ball is very different than most. So I think it really varies city to city. Certainly for us, I believe in having a well-rounded offensive attack, believe in having the multiplicity and versatility to be able to attack defenses in a bunch of different ways. But I just think year to year and certainly city to city, it can vary.
Last one. What was it like having the in-season Hard Knocks crew around as frequently as it was?
Yeah, honestly, that was an easy pill to swallow because the entire division was doing it. If it was just us, that would have been tough. But knowing that the cameras were in every other city in our division, that was easier for me. They were super professional. They were great. And they worked with us. So if there were some things that we maybe didn't want in there, we worked together. I have some good stories I'll tell you off air, some things that I asked them not to include. But, very professional, and I thought they did a great job.
It's sacred time, team meetings, nights before games or during the course of the week, and there was a lot of Kevin Stefanski team meeting related stuff, and you guys were kind of in and out at that time, winning, losing close. It was a tough year, and I just, I've known you a decade and a half, and I've never seen you in that setting. Was it strange watching back and kind of seeing yourself?
Well, I would say this. In the first part, you don't even know the cameras are in there. They're using the cameras on the wall, so that's the easy part. You don't think about it. I didn't watch it. It was one of those, hey, tell me if I need to see something or if I need to approve something. But I wasn't spending whatever night that was on. I was kind of busy when it was airing. So if there was something that I needed to know about, I certainly knew about it, but I didn't pay much attention to it.
Hey, tear it up next season. Thanks for the chat.
Appreciate you guys.
That's Kevin Stefanski, head coach of the Cleveland Browns, two-time National Football League Coach of the Year. And what a wonderful spot the Browns are in. I mean, to get there, it wasn't such a wonderful situation, but they have the 2 spot, and holy cow, are they going to get a nice player. From Salt of the Earth, Kevin Stefanski, to the Genuine Article, former Minnesota Vikings head coach Leslie Frazier. He joins Combine Coverage 2025 from Indianapolis when we return to KFAN.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Wild Wednesday is sponsored by Jim Beam, the official bourbon of the Minnesota Wild. Are here all season long. Listen every Wednesday through March for your chance to win tickets.
Smith, back to pass. Rush comes from behind him, throws right, touchdown. Jackson Smith in Jigba, and it's 17-13 Minnesota.
Here comes one of our very favorites, Leslie Frazier, former head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, also a defensive coordinator here beginning in 2007. And we welcome you back to KFAN's coverage of the 2025 Indianapolis Combine. Leslie now is the assistant head coach for the Seattle Seahawks. And before we chat about the who, what, where, and why of the now in the NFL, down memory lane we go. Jared Allen, HOF, Hall of Famer, had his best years in the NFL when you were his coordinator. What do you remember about Jared? And he's a Hall of Famer.
Just congratulations, first of all, to Jared. Just a well-deserved, tremendous player, as you and I both know. Pete, you know it as well. But what I remember, PA, is after some of those tremendous sacks, his sack celebration really got the fans going, and that was awesome to see, because that meant something good was happening. So, but a lot of fun memories, just seeing him dominate week in and week out. Did a great job.
And you know, Jared's talked about this a little bit post-career, and I'm quite sure who he was in Kansas City compared to who he became in Minnesota with the player development department and everything. You know, I'm quite certain that's going to be part of his Hall of Fame speech. But, I mean, you were right next to it along with Les Pico and some other people, where I'm certainly not trying to make anybody sound destitute. And he's not the first person in the world to have, you know, demons inside of him, so to speak. But coming to Minnesota not only changed his career, it changed his life. And you had a lot to do with that, Leslie.
It's funny you bring that up. He texted me a few days ago about the ceremony, you know, a little back and forth congratulatory period. And I was reflecting on the first visit we had. It was during free agency. He comes up, he's sitting in my office, and we're talking about things other than money, because, you know, sometimes people think in free agency it's all about money. And the thing I wanted to share with him, PA, I really felt like for some of the things he was dealing with in life, that our situation was going to be the best situation, because we were going to deal with the man and not just the athlete. And to his credit, along with his agent, they believed that, and a lot of good things happened for him off the field as well as on the field.
And, you know, whether you're working in Seattle, you're working in Buffalo, you're coordinating or head coaching the Minnesota Vikings, playing for the Bears back in the day, well, what you had with the Williams Wall, Pat and Kevin Williams. I mean, being at the Combine 14 times now, it's like the three technique, the Kevin Williams of the world have become the new quarterback, where they're really difficult to find, and everybody's trying to get two of them. But, you know, down memory lane we go, having Pat and Kevin Williams. How great was that?
And that Williams Wall was outstanding. There was a reason we were able to lead the league versus the run for so many years. They were terrific, both Pat and Kevin, and people thought that they were like twin brothers out there because they were huge. But you're right. It's hard to find those guys today, but they were as dominant as they come for a period of time, and very thankful I had a chance to work with them.
And lastly here on the down memory lane we go portion of the equation, Antoine Winfield. Is Antoine Winfield perhaps the smartest football player you've ever been around?
Without question, he's one of the smartest guys I've ever had a chance to coach. His versatility, being able to play in the slot and then go outside and be a dominant player at the corner position, is so rare. And it's what people look for today. We have a young man with our team now, Witherspoon, who is outstanding, doing both, playing that dual role. But Antoine was just in a class by himself. He was such a ferocious tackler. You know, people saw his coverability. I can remember we're playing Indianapolis at home, and he's matched up against a Hall of Famer, Marvin Harrison, who is a tremendous player in his own right. And there's Antoine just doing all the things he does from a coverage standpoint. And then we move him in the slot in nickel situations, and he's tackling, you know, these running backs and Joseph Adai, and just making guys look very normal. He was rare, and definitely enjoyed having a chance to coach him.
Shoot, Pete, you're going to remember this. There was a Vikings-Colts game here in like 2004 before Leslie got here at not Lucas Oil Stadium. It was the RCA Dome, where there were so many Vikings injuries, Antoine had to play linebacker in that game. And remember, he had like 19 tackles.
Yeah, that was Manning was quarterback. I was coaching at the time, and they had the 2 tight end sets, and that was an issue because you could play. It kind of started in the Giants with Shockey, where you could play a 3 wide offense with 2 tight ends. And so, how do you match up put the extra line? Well, we just said, you know what, make Antoine a linebacker and just let him go, and he played unbelievably well at linebacker. Not corner, not nickel, but at linebacker, he was that special. He could hit he wasn't very big, right? And that's why he didn't get drafted very highly. But man, pound for pound, that guy could hit like a freight train.
But if you think about all the players that you've seen, as in your time playing or coaching, you know that they're taller, longer arms, faster, drafted higher, the whole thing. But there's more to it. There's so much more to it than that, and that would include becoming a scholar of the game like Antoine, right?
You're exactly right, and that's part of what we're dealing with this week in the combine. As we're talking and we're interviewing players and getting a chance to get to know them, sometimes people get enamored with the height, weight, and speed, but you just hit the nail on the head. Trying to figure out what's behind that chest cavity, that's the secret sauce, because there's more to it than just being a guy that can jump high, run fast, lift the weight room. That intelligence, those instincts, the character, all that matters, and that's what myself and other coaches that are here, along with the personnel departments, are trying to figure out.
Leslie Frazier, the associate head coach with the Seattle Seahawks, is with Pete Bursich and yours truly at the Combine.
Leslie, a question for you is over the years as a player, but I want to talk to you about a coach, is how this game has changed. I mean, you played in an era where it was, ATF and BTF, blitz to formation, or automatic front coverage. The game, the data now, all this stuff now, the technology, is it still on some levels really the same? And how much more do players have to carry more mentally than they used to? Or, what is that like? I mean, I guess that's how do you handle that as a coach, right? Teaching these guys these things.
Yeah, you're right on. There's so much more information available to us today. And the way analytics has come into the game has really changed the game in a lot of ways. And but at the end of the day, Pete, it still comes back to blocking and tackling. And when you're putting together game plans, that part of it is still crucial. We just have more availability when it comes to data than we had in the past, and we can get it much quicker than we once could. But when you're putting together schemes, you're trying to do what your players do best. And you want to do a good job of not bogging them down, because as coaches, we can do that sometimes. We can bog guys down, and you played, you know what I'm talking about, by giving them so much information. But you got to determine for your players, it's not so much what you know as a coach, but what do they know and what can they execute, and that's what it comes down to.
Pete?
All right, you mentioned what's behind the chest cavity. I think about the guys we just talked about with Antoine and Pat Williams and Kevin Williams and Jared Allen, how smart they were, right? Because Pat Williams, they brought Pat in when I was still coaching. Smart football player. I mean, like just unbelievable that way. But there's difference between book smart and street smart, right? So how do you go about sifting those guys out? What are you looking for when you interview a guy?
That's a great question, because that's exactly one of the reasons that we're here this week, is to sit down and talk to guys in person to get a feel for their body language. Sometimes when you're on Zoom, and there are a lot of staffs that are not here. The combine is changing that way, and some people don't see the value of sitting across from a guy in person versus doing it on Zoom. But for me and our staff, we see the importance of our getting a chance to get to know that guy in a personal way, and just to see how he answers questions, really looking you in the eyes when you're talking to him. All those intangibles, sometimes they matter when it comes to this guy playing on your team or not playing on your team. So, as I mentioned before, you don't want to just get caught up in numbers. It's the person. You're hiring the person, and you want to know if that guy can fit with what you're doing, and if he's going to add to your team and your organization in the right way. And I think having a chance to sit down face to face with players gives you that. In this environment, was a very competitive environment, some will say, but we'll just fly him in and talk with him. Well, you want to have multiple looks at that player, and this allows you to do that.
Well, what are some of your tricks, or how have you handled over the years with these interviews at the combine? What do you get, like 20 minutes?
Yeah, 20 minutes per player, yep.
Okay. How do you handle those who are programmed by their agents, by their marketing agencies? They're going to hit you with A, B, and C because it's A and B are problems that took place 3 years ago. C almost got you the Heisman, and they're so prepped up for it. How do you handle that?
I think some of it, PA, is your experience. After doing this for so many years, that has to help. And then the type of questions that you ask, how you structure your questions as well. Because you're right, there are agents that are preparing their guys to be able to deal with some of the things that are going to be thrown at them. But you just got to be able to sift through that from experience, and then maybe you ask them some questions that aren't the normal questions they would expect to have.
What, as assistant head coach, into your second year as assistant head coach with the Seattle Seahawks, working for Mike McDonald, what do you do? Like, what are some of your key roles?
Well, I get asked that a lot. People ask me often. They've asked me that a few times here as well. Like, what do you do? What's your day like? The best way for me to describe it is I do everything that a head coach does without having a head coach title. I'm involved with our special teams, our offense, our defense. I mean, just
don't get ripped in the media.
Yeah. So it's been very fulfilling. I'm so thankful to have this opportunity, and grateful for Mike, grateful for John Slider and the Seahawks organization that provided this opportunity for me. And when they called me, PA, and expressed to me that they were going to be hiring Mike, first-time head coach, young head coach, and why they wanted me in this role, I thought about it and I said, man, that makes sense. It's something I wish as a first-time head coach I had done myself. Had a experienced guy and Bill Parcells, I'll tell you this story, Pete. Bill Parcells, I had an interview for the head job there many years ago when he was like the president of the team and the general manager at the same time. And he told me in the interview, he said, I'm going to hire another guy, and he told me who the guy was later on. He said, I'm gonna give you something. I think you're going to be a head coach one day. He said, what I did when I became a head coach, I hired one of my former head coaches to be a coach on my staff, and he helped me tremendously in making that transition from coordinator to head coach. Now, when I got my opportunity, I didn't do that, and I think back on it, and I said, man, I wish I had done that. And so for John Slider and the Seahawks organization to do what they've done, bravo. I think it's tremendous, and I've definitely enjoyed it.
Now, one of your receivers, Jackson Smith and Jigba, I hadn't watched him live until we were out there this year. And, I'm hearing the Brian Flores and the defensive staff talk about him and stuff like that. And you'll see some numbers with him where he's playing out of the slot either all the time or so much. He's a legitimate NFL slot machine. And then calling the game with Pete and watching the game and everything. Holy cow, what a talent he is, Leslie.
He's outstanding. He's a guy to definitely keep you on, and I'm so happy to see the bust-out year that he had this season. And we could see it in practice every single day. And, you remember some of the things he did at Ohio State when he was coming out. And then his rookie year gets banged up a little bit, so his numbers weren't quite as good. And then this year, man, between he and Geno and what they were able to accomplish together, Geno Smith, our quarterback, it was outstanding, and there's more to come. He's still a young player who's still developing, but what a breakout year.
A couple more for former Vikings head coach Leslie Frazier from Indianapolis.
Leslie, you've seen a lot of guys go from draft day to retirement. And I ask you this in this respect: is what keeps you going outside of the competitiveness and winning the Super Bowl and all? But what are the stories that you're taking away? There's got to be some guys in your mind that you saw snot-nosed young kids coming into the combine, and then they grow right and mature into great young men and mentors for other people. So what is it about this that keeps you going?
And I'll add to that in that, in my run and Pete's too, we've run into a lot of people who have to have they have to have a logo. They have to walk around with some logo. It's their whole identity. And knowing Leslie Frazier, the Christian, well, that's your identity, the Bible and Jesus Christ being our risen Savior. Does that help you as a grounded identity where you just don't have to just take any job?
It's the difference for me personally. There's so many ups and downs in this profession, as the both of you know. I mean, it's an emotional roller coaster, and if you're not grounded, we all three of us have seen some of the paths that both coaches and players will take when things get a little bit out of whack. And if you're in this business long enough, it's going to be out of whack at times. And you got to deal with some adversity. You got to be able to handle it in the right way. And my faith has definitely allowed me to be able to do that. And it's a daily thing, being on my knees and praying through some situations. And to answer your question, Pete, the thing that drives me, yes, the competitive part for sure, but the chance to impact players. And when you have players that tell you the impact and some of the things you've done to help them, that has a lot to do with why you do what you do. Because at the end of the day, we know there's an expiration date on our time here. So when you have a chance to influence people and make a difference in their lives in a positive way, you want to take advantage of that. And I've been blessed with this pedestal, and I want to use it as long as I can to make a positive difference.
Now, in closing with Leslie Frazier, you've been a head coach, as we've mentioned, former Super Bowl champion. Shoot, you were in the Super Bowl shuffle video that they did. You were in that, right?
Yeah, I was in there.
You were back, not bragging about it, but you were back there doing the moonwalk before Michael Jackson brought the moonwalk to all of us. That was cool. So you've done a lot of things at a very high level in this chosen professional career. 2010, middle of the season, it was one of your first games. When they carried you off the field at FedEx Field after your first win, that personally, it gives me chills now saying it. Because I just know what a wonderful moment it was for you at that moment, how much like Greenway and Jared Allen and Lieber and some of the other players on the team just really, really loved you and just really felt good for you in that moment. But that moment has to be one of the greater that you've experienced, right?
Oh, no doubt about it. That's a special memory. Still sticks in my mind. Those were great players, and to have a chance to work with them, it was special. And to get a road win, and I can still remember, I think it was Brett who ended up keeping the ball on a naked to run the clock out, and it was just, it was a special time. I wish we could have, had a few more of those along the way. But that was special for sure.
Well, think about your first year, man. At the end of the year, we're going to play on Christmas. Now we're staying at the greatest hotel I've ever stayed at in my life for 5 days. And you're going to play on a Tuesday, and Eagles are good. And then your guy Winfield smacks Mike Vick on a corner blitz, and it kind of turned the whole game around. So many memories that we could share from our days here together. But thank you very much for doing this. God bless you and your family. And best of luck to Seattle this year, okay?
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you, PA. Thank you, Pete.
That's Leslie Frazier from the 2025 NFL Combine. Into the final hour of day 2 of Combine coverage. Courtney Cronin with ESPN and ESPN.com will join about 20-25 minutes from now. And when we return, we discuss the Minnesota Vikings, but from an accolades standpoint. Don't leave. You're listening to The Fan.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.